back for part 2. We've already gone over in part 1 Samuel's journey, and now we want to find out the real juicy bit. What's worked for him, some of his best property deals. So welcome back, Samuel.
Thank you, brother.
Yes, we want to find out what's been the most profitable strategy in property for yourself, and maybe tell us about one of your best deals.
Yeah, sure. So I think the way that I've made the most money over the last few years is through planning permission and option agreements. So an option agreement is where I've done this a lot on land recently as well, which has been really, really cool. So it's basically where you buy something, but you buy it on an option. So normally the best property deals are the ones that you can add massive value to.
Yes.
So for instance, buy a piece of land, get planning permission, build some houses, and then you've taken a piece of grass that's pasture land, and then you've turned it into something that's a viable residential project. The danger of doing that is if you buy when it's already got planning, then you're going to pay a premium.
Yes.
If you buy when it hasn't got planning, then you're going to have a risk of not getting planning.
Absolutely.
So when we went to lockdown and I moved to Buckinghamshire, I secured a piece of land that was just I wrote to the owner, just literally down the road from here, and I said to him, look, I'm interested in this land, is it for sale? I managed to buy it on an agreement where I gave him the price that he wanted, which was £110,000, but I got it on an option agreement. What that means is that I'll pay a small amount now, which can be as little as £1, it was about £5,000, but a small amount now, then I'm going to get planning, and then once I've got planning, the value is going to shoot up, but I've got the option to buy it for the price that we agreed. So that's been huge. I just bought a factory a couple months ago, also did on an option agreement, so I bought it for 972 grand, but on an option. So again, I put 25 grand down.
That you could afford to lose.
Which I can afford to lose.
Right.
It's just a small amount in the grand scheme of things.
Yes.
Put 25 grand down, then I got planning, then I bought it, so I bought that for 972 grand.
Yeah.
But that's got a gross development value of 6.6 million.
Yeah, so can you tell us how that works? So you've bought this asset for 972,000.
Yeah.
Currently, what is it?
It's currently a factory. It's just
Current,
a rundown
factory.
commercial.
And it needs to be knocked down.
No,
It doesn't.
Converted. But the outside's quite nice. It's quite historic and it's nice. Structure is good, but the inside is just.
Is it in a conservation area, or does it have any listing to it?
No.
Nothing like that. So is that something you advise to stay away from when you're going for planning? Because I know these restrictions can.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'd be a hypocrite if I said stay away, because I do tackle on that stuff as well, but it takes a lot of time.
Yes.
Like the castle you mentioned, I bought a castle, that's grade 2 star listed, heritage, it's on Greenbelt, that's a slow burner.
Right.
This, I managed to get planning quite quickly.
So what was your motive to get in the castle?
The castle, that was just, I want to grow into it. It was a rundown historical building, and I spoke to the owners. I also, there was 200 Free French soldiers that trained there, and most of them died, and I spoke to one of the last remaining soldiers, and he then passed away shortly after. And sentimental, it's a beautiful building, and I just could see long-term value in it, and I own it outright. There's no mortgages on it, there's no bridging on it.
What are the costs associated with that? So just having that asset, all right, you paid it outright.
Yeah.
What are the sort of bills that come with the castle?
Well, there's no finance to pay because I own it outright.
Sure.
I've got a guy that lives on site,
right,
who I let live rent free,
okay,
which doesn't cost me anything, but he maintains everything. He does all the gardens, keeps it clean.
Okay.
There is CCTV security, so there's some cost, but it's very minor.
Yeah. What about things like council taxes or any
Well,
of
it's
things
derelict. It's run down. So I'll probably pay £7 grand a month. But again, that's minor, because once that's finished, the value is going to be between 6 and 7 million.
Right, and what did you purchase it for?
800 grand.
800,000. So wow, so like more than a 6x on that.
Yeah.
Right.
The factory I bought for 972.
Yes.
That's got a GDV on it of 6.6 million.
And what's it going to cost you to build that?
About 3.5.
3.5.
And then I've also got to pay sill tax to the council.
Yes. So can you explain to some of the viewers what is the sill tax?
Sill tax is community infrastructure levy tax. So that's if you're doing a big development, the council will permit you to do it, but they'll usually ask for something back into the community. So they might, for instance, say you need to provide some of the houses or some of the apartments need to be affordable. Sill taxes, we're paying, how much is it now? About £400,000, which is going to go back into the community, and that was part of the negotiation when they agreed to give us planning permission for 48 apartments. which we've got. So this is the stuff I wouldn't necessarily recommend people get into straight away.
Yeah.
But you can make £1 million on one deal. So it's big, it's very slow, it takes a lot of time and effort, but that's the sort of stuff I'm working on now.
So what I'm hearing is, so sale tax, what we just went over, is when you're creating more houses out there, you want to make sure that, you know, enough money is going back into schools, hospitals, doctors, etc.,
Exactly
to create that for the community, etc. So the question I want to ask right now is, if you was a first-time buyer right now, what would your strategy be? Obviously, you're a big businessman right now. You're buying castles, you're redeveloping big areas, your experience. But imagine you knew how to buy a house. You know, as a first-time buyer, you've got a bit of money, maybe 20 or 30,000. What would your strategy be? Would it just be to a single dwelling houses? Would you go into HMOs, service accommodation? What would be your strategy right now if you had to do it all over again?
Yeah, if I only had sort of £30,000, I mean, in today's market, 20, 30 grand doesn't get you that far. Like back when I started, 20, 30 grand, you could buy a house, you could turn it into a HMO. Now, it's so unless you've got significant savings, 30, 40, 50 grand, you're going to struggle to buy something that's actually going to produce much income. So I would probably say, rather than thinking of yourself as a property investor, consider thinking of yourself as a property entrepreneur. Because if you're a property entrepreneur, you can start with zero money. You can do lease option agreements. You can take control of properties. You can force the cash flow higher by renting it out as serviced accommodation.
Yeah.
You can package deals and broker them to investors. So if you think of yourself rather than a property investor, if you ain't got really much to invest, see yourself as a property entrepreneur. How can you solve problems in the property market and get paid quickly? Because the most important thing that people need right now, in my opinion, is cash. You need to have fast pound and slow pound. So buying a castle, redeveloping houses, that's all slow. I mean, just to buy a house takes 3 to 6 months. Then if you're going to be converting it or refurbing it, how long is it going to be before you actually see some rental income in quite a while? And then what, you're going to make an extra 300 quid a month? Awesome, then what? Your money's run out. So that's fine, be a property investor, but you need a business that's actually going to bring you in active cash flow. And I think that's the thing that people haven't got right, because they're thinking, how can I buy a house? And then they get trapped into all this nonsense by the government with help to buy schemes and lifetime ISAs. They're all a sham.
Yeah.
And they're all created to make you go down the whole corporate ladder of buy a house to live in, which is not an asset, it's a liability because it's not giving you any money. Pay the mortgage down, slow. We ain't got time for that. We're in a crisis right now.
Yes.
And the average salary is what, 2-3 grand a month? Well, how is that enough to be able to live on, pay your bills, live a decent life, and save enough money? Me and you hustled in jobs and stuff, fine. But right now, I think having a job and saving money as deposits to buy houses is too slow.
Yeah. So you're saying look at side hustles, look at alternative things that you can do. And so in the property game, there is scope to do some deals.
Yeah, because that's where the money is.
Yeah.
So if you're around people that are investors that are buying stuff and doing things, and you're around that environment where the money's at, then you can find a way to slot yourself in, add a bit of value, be an entrepreneur, and start making some serious money.
Yeah.
And then save that money and reinvest it.
Yeah. So can you give us an example of a deal that, without owning a property, what sort of deal would you do and what sort of money would you be getting paid? So when people think, well, how much should I be saving? How much should I be making from a deal? What does that look like?
Well, for instance, one of my videographers, Amelia, who she used to film me doing property deals, so she'd come out with me and watch me doing deals, and she was like, damn, I want to do this. I mentored her and I helped her, and she managed to secure a property in Clapham, which she doesn't own. So it was a house in Clapham, which was currently running as a HMO. Really good area, banging area, but the landlord was quite distant, quite tired, had a couple of empty rooms. The property needed a little bit of a lift, so she said to him, how's about, I'll pay you a flat monthly rent for 3 years. You ain't got to worry about anything, and then I'll take control of the property and I'll manage it, I'll rent it out. He agreed, so she rents it out. She does it on a corporate management agreement, and now she's making a profit of £800 a month. She only had to put 3 grand into that deal. She's making 800 quid a month. She didn't even have the 3 grand, so she made the 3 grand from brokering a deal. So she got that. She then secured a property in Windsor, which was a normal rental property right next to Windsor Castle. And me and her are thinking, it's near Windsor Castle. This is a good area for short-term lets. This property, it's a 2-bedroom house. She secured it. She pays the landlord £1,100. I think it's about £1,100 a month she pays for a 2-bed house. She then rents it out on Airbnb, of course, with all the right agreements and permissions and contracts. She's making, again, £800 a month from that. I mean, how many of those do you need to do to replace your income? 3, 4, and then suddenly, I'm now full-time in property.
Yes.
I'm now able to start saving money. I'm now able to grow this business. That's being a property entrepreneur. Save the income and invest it. Or partner with people. If you're able to say, I've got this house, this house, this house, they're all, I don't own them, but I control them, and I'm making this much, this much, this much. You've then got the credibility to be able to say to an investor who hasn't got much time, you've got 200 grand. Why don't I help you? We'll do a joint venture together. I'll find the property, I'll manage the refurb, I'll sort the builders, I'll manage it, I'll do everything. All you need to do is put the money in, but I want 30% of the profits. And then suddenly you've now got a 30% stake because you set a company up together and you don't own the property. Sorry, you now own the property, you've got the capital appreciation, you've got the rent, but you put zero money in. And that's what loads of my students do. They come to me, now I'm funding people's deals and saying, I'll pay you, here's 100 grand, here's 100 grand, here's 200 grand. My students are then doing all the work. They're happy because they're hustlers and they haven't got any money in. I'm happy because it's completely passive. There's enough money in the pie for it to be cut up in many different ways.
What happens when it goes, or if it goes wrong? How do you have a contingency plan? How do you manage risk? So one of your students, you think they know the game, you've trained them, etc.
Yeah.
You've given them a bit of money, and how do you not become like a micromanager yourself? Or if you're trying to make something happen, the person who's invested money comes over your shoulder and says, no, I don't think you should do it like this. I've got more experience, or I would have done it like this, and don't know some of these newer techniques, such as serviced accommodation, booking.com, Airbnb, and saying, look, I can broker this. People pay a premium $150 a night rather than what, £20 a day if you would have it on a normal AST agreement.
Yeah.
How do you manage that in terms of, you've got a student of yours, he's got 100 grand of your money, he's doing a deal on your behalf, and you see something going wrong. How do you manage that sort of relationship?
Well, for a start, the people that I give money to do deals have all been through my training, and I'm also their mentor. So they're not going to say to me, no, let me do it my way. If I'm saying to them, look, I'm helping them, that's part of the deal, I'm mentoring them. So I've never had them sort of say, no, I'm not going to listen to you.
Yes.
But I think in terms of things going wrong, it's a great question, because whenever you're doing a deal, you always need to look at your exit strategies. So even if you're doing a rent to rent, you need to say, okay, well, what happens if I can't rent it out? What happens if the market changes?
Worst case scenario.
Yeah, worst case. And then you put in things like break clauses in place, where you say, well, after 3 months, if it's not working, I might take a small hit because I've spent a little bit of time and money setting it up, but after 3 months, I've got the option to hand the keys back. If you're doing a refurb project, you need to put contingencies in place to make sure that there's enough cushion in the deal. And that's the case of every deal. Even if you're just buying a house and renting it out, you need to say, hang on a minute, if I'm only making £150 a month profit, and then at the end of my fixed term interest rates go up, I'm going to be losing money.
Yeah.
So there needs to be enough profit in the deal for things to go wrong. There needs to be exit strategies, contingencies in place. If you're partnering with somebody, you need to have a very clear and specific joint venture agreement where you've got roles, responsibilities, who's responsible for what. So it's important, and that's where education comes in, knowing what the pitfalls or the problems or the or the risk is. And you can never fully eliminate risk.
Yes.
I've had deals go wrong, I've had deals go good. You can't fully eliminate the risk, but what you can do is you can de-risk it as much as possible with education and experience.
I just want to end it on the last note here, part 2, guys. Partnerships. I want to speak quickly about partnerships. This is two people who basically don't know each other coming together at a business deal. How do you manage each other's expectations? Because you think you're both in it for the good, you both got that same direction, but actually you've both been brought up by different parenting, you've both had different education systems. You think you've had a sort of conversation. How do you know how to find a right partner? Because I've had a partnership. I haven't done many partnerships, but I had one partnership that went amazing for a year, and then it just went sour as anything, and it's actually put me off partnerships. What do you look for when you go and find a partner? Because it is a very sensitive relationship, and obviously when you mix money in the equation, people can change very quickly. And we're talking about big numbers. How do you manage partnerships?
Yeah, I think that it's really important to know that when you're partnering with somebody on a deal, you're partnering also with that person. So I wouldn't rush into a partnership without having a good relationship with the person first, without knowing them, knowing how they work. So I wouldn't recommend partnering with a stranger just on the basis that the deal's good, because then it's almost like a marriage. If you're going into a business partnership or a joint venture, to some extent, you're almost connected to that person. And if they're a jerk and greedy and difficult to deal with, it's going to be expensive, you're going to have solicitors involved, it's a bit of a nightmare. I have had partnerships that haven't gone great, but I think in a partnership, it's about knowing the person, it's about having contracts, making sure that you've got everything all drawn up in writing. Even with family, I'm business partners with my brother. Every time I ever do a deal with anybody, even if they're my family, I'll have a contract in place, because that family can be the worst, because you know them really well and you think, oh, it's going to be fine, we love each other. But as you say, when money's on the table, and then the expectations, having really clear roles and responsibilities. If I come on into a deal and I'm funding it, and my job is to be a silent partner, I'm not even going to get super involved. I'm going to say, look, these are the figures, this is what's happening. So I think it's just about having the right deal and having the right partner and having the right contracts.
I totally agree with you there, Samuel, to get stuff done in black and white so you're both managing each other's expectations, because later on it's all about he said, she said, you know. And when it comes to family, sometimes you could say, well, I'm older, I've been around longer, I've done more, or I'm younger and I did more of the legwork. Rather than have any of them sort of circumstances, get it done in black and white paper, you know, because then it's there in front of you.
And then also have exit strategies. So if you're setting up a business with somebody, you can say, well, in a year's time, if one of us isn't pulling our weight and it's not really working, what are we going to do? Maybe we'll have a push and pull contract.
Brilliant.
Just having something in place. If I want to leave, if you want to leave, if he doesn't, and knowing what those exit strategies are and agreeing them in the cold light of day when everyone's happy and having it in writing.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Anyone that says, no, we trust each other, man, it's all good. No. Right.
Yes. Agreed. Well, thank you for joining us for part 2. Join us for part 3, where we fire some questions at Samuel and find out the last little section that we need to.